Welcome to the November community meeting. Okay, so we have a bunch of stuff today, some big announcements. So first I'll start off with talking about the community celebrations, and then an announcement about the GX champions. You might have seen that in announcements. Eric will talk about product roadmap updates. And we have Markus here from Microsoft with Microsoft Fabric talking about Great Expectations and Microsoft Fabric, semantic data model data validation. Don Hempner is going to finish us off with an announcement about Great Expectations 1.0. Okay. So first of all, some thanks and kudos. So there are several folks who are repeatedly kind of helping answer people's questions in the community Slack and working together to solve problems. And all of these folks on this screen over the past month did that at least once, and several of them multiple times. Contributing and helping others, and a special shout out to Lori and Alexi, who really stood out. Okay, and then Will, do you want to talk a bit about the contribution highlights this month?
Yeah, sure. So there's two that we wanted to talk about. The first one, PR 8938 by Itai, one of our repeat contributors, was adding SQL Alchemy support for this multi-column expectation. So expect multi-column values to not all be null. And what was special about this was it was an already existing contribution. Pandas functionality already existed, but there is kind of this desire by users to have SQLite support. And so that was what this PR added. And what was kind of subtle about it was pandas and SQLite express null differently. One, it's NA and one's null. And so had to sort of split the tests up to make sure both were handled correctly. So a really nice, elegant way to do this. And then the second PR by Kurt 1984 was an expectation where we expect column value to be above specified percentile. So you give it a number, you give it a quantile value, and then you do a comparison there of where that number lies in that distribution. And here there's some basic pandas functionality, but what was really special about this one was so Kurt 1984 did the contribution. Another user who was also interested in contributing expectations kind of chimed in the thread and then asked a question about what a particular part of their code asked for an explanation there. So not only was this a contribution, but it was just a great kind of forum for.
Oh shoot.
I got it. Yeah. Oh no. So it was a great contribution, but it was also kind of this nice forum for interaction and just knowledge sharing among the community. So I thought it was a wonderful thing to highlight. So I'm sure there was many more, but this is what we had time to share this morning.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Will.
Thank you.
Okay. So I wanted to take some time and talk about the Great Expectations, the GX champions. So this is a new program that we officially launched just in the past month. I posted about it in announcements. And basically, what makes someone a GX champion is that they have ongoing involvement in one of the following ways. One, maybe they're answering questions very regularly from other community members in Discourse and in Slack. Others could be contributing to the GX code base or documentation. Those are the big ones where we see a lot of ongoing involvement. Others could be regular feedback and regular community engagement. So here are the folks who have stood out in those ways over the past several months. And being a champion because these people are so actively involved, we also kind of loop them in with things a little early, get feedback. They have opportunities to connect with other champions. And sorry, I met a couple people. And yeah, so anyway, these people on the screen here are just incredibly helpful in supporting other community members and also helping to flag issues and really just make the tool better. So thank you to the champions. Okay, I'm going to pass it over now to Eric for some product roadmap updates.
Hey y'all, I'm Eric, product manager here at Great Expectations, and we have some exciting things in the works for GX Cloud, our managed data quality platform. So we recently achieved a milestone where users can get set up and validate Snowflake data all within the web UI. And this most recent month, we've added support to create expectation suites and group, logical checks together. And these suites are completely reusable and can be applied to multiple assets of the same schema or that have similar characteristics, very similar to how the Python API works today. And what's next? Empowering users to be more specific in the data that they wish to bring under test, starting with time-based splitting. So let's say you have a fact table containing billions of sales transactions, and you can define that as a table asset and add a time-based splitter such as split by day, split by month, split by year. And when you want to validate that table, you could specify the batch of data that you want, whether it's a specific day and time or kind of the time window that you would like to validate at runtime. So it's a bit more cost and performant there, and configurable all within the UI. Next up is the ability to create expectations from column descriptive metrics. So these are like characteristics of your data. They're the columns, the row count, min, max, how many null, like the null percentages, data types. So just more characteristics of your data. And with those, you're more informed to define checks that are relevant to you. So an example of this would be to take a particular column and verify the data type that you expect from that column, all within the UI. So getting set up quickly. And then lastly, viewing the history of changes to your expectations. So if you're in a kind of a multiplayer mode and you have multiple developers working on different suites and assets, you could see how, who changed what, when, and that would just bring richer context to your data quality project. So lots of things coming up here in the next month or two. And if you have interest in our cloud product, please reach out to greatexpectations.io/cloud and just fill out a quick survey. Yeah, that's it, Molly.
Sorry, I was muted. Hello. Yeah, thank you so much, Eric. So now we have a special guest, Markus.
Hello.
I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so that you can do so.
Yeah, let me find the buttons.
Yeah. Stop share.
Sorry for looking confused. Okay, excellent. You guys can hear me?
Yes.
Obviously, the first question for every Zoom and team meeting. Welcome. This is a presentation about a joint collaboration between Great Expectations and Microsoft. I'm Markus Cozowicz. I'm an architect on Microsoft Fabric, specifically the Semantic Link team. So to start with, let me give you a brief introduction of what Fabric is and what we're trying to achieve. So over the last couple of years, the analytics landscape obviously changed and is evolving and has many, many things. And the main challenges that we see is, first, there's this struggle between self-service and governed governance needs, that you want to be able to create your resources, your notebooks, whatever you have on your own, but at the same time, your IT department needs to have some control over it. Then there's this societal thing about data. It's coming up and again, and the idea is to provide a platform where you can bring all the data that you want for your analysis workflows. And lastly, scale, like where you want to have a platform that allows you to work on small data sets, but also be able to scale up on larger ones as you need it. And so we created Fabric, which was just announced GA last week, which is the combination of 3 products. Starting with Azure Data Factory, where you can bring in your low-code, no-code experience data into your lake. Second, we are adding Spark to the mix, so you can use your big data processing for your data engineering. And finally, Power BI, so that you can show the reports to your decision makers and your BI logic. Now, within Fabric, the bottom layer is called One Lake. It's like your one lake house that serves all the experiences and technologies that are sitting on top, to be able to have this common data access layer, be it for data integration, be it for notebooks in your data science experience, or for business intelligence on the Power BI side. So as we're advertising, you should go through medallion architecture. I'm sure a lot of people have seen this already, where you refine your data through bronze, silver, and gold. And our customers already today are using Great Expectations to validate their data by accessing One Lake and making sure that as the data moves and gets refined through those stages, it adheres to the data quality requirements that they set out. And they can do this within Fabric already. Now, the element that's blank is the last one, which is in Power BI, there's something called semantic model, or formerly called Power BI data model, Power BI data sets, which also includes business logic. And semantic link is the glue layer that helps you bridge from Power BI semantic models into the Python world. And specifically at that point is where we are also introducing the integration, so that our customers can use Great Expectations to validate data that sits in Power BI. Now, just a brief introduction what else semantic link can do. So it exposes the Power BI artifacts, tables, and measures, and DAX queries to the Python world, both with the Pandas interface and with Spark. For the integration with Great Expectations, we've gone through the Pandas experience, but you can also use the Spark one to just feed in the Spark queries if you have the need to join the data with other bigger sources. So what does the Great Expectation integration with semantic link encompass? Well, first of all, we added a data source that lets you access Power BI data sets. And then once you have the data source, you can get the tables, measures, and DAX queries as assets, and then go on with your flow. What it enables you also is to not only use a code-first experience, but the YAML experience, so that you can be declarative and add all the steps. And from our perspective, a semantic link allows you to get pre-authenticated access to your data that sits in Power BI. Okay. Oh, doesn't like me. Excellent. Okay, let's have a brief look at the code. I hope it's big enough. I think for GX users that are familiar, we're trying to follow the patterns that are there and set up by Great Expectations. So in line 8, you see how we are adding a Fabric data source specifically for data sets. And then we have the assets in line 11 and 14 and 21, the assets that we're exposing. Now on the measure, I'd like to take a pause here and just try to explain what a measure is. I'm not sure if everybody's familiar. It's in more technical terms, it's an unbound lambda function. In more practical terms, think about the sum of revenue, and it's an aggregation function that you're defining. Now, that aggregation function, it could be just sum of revenue, but it could be more complicated and include filters like sum of revenue, excluding all the internal transfers that your booking might have done or whatnot. And then you have this one measure that's defined that gives you the right revenue number to display to your BI intelligence or whatever else you want to do. And then separately from that, you can define at what granularity you want to see the revenue. Do you want to have it stratified by time or maybe by region? So you can separate those two concerns. And that's what you see here in line 14 to 18, that you can access those measures. And then we have some power users that want to like issue DEX expressions. And if you're a data scientist or more from the Python world like me, something new, our customers on the Power BI side are very familiar with it. And one of the main things they want to do with it is they want to get access to some internal tables that allow them to understand, for example, if the data model that we have, referential integrity is properly defined, and you can pull this out and then define your expectation suite afterwards. Yeah, so let me just repeat: we have the data source, the free assets, and obviously you can use the same configurations on the YAML side. Okay. Yeah. Questions, if there are. I don't know how you usually run this in the forum.
Yeah, we can give time for questions.
Yeah. We'll also post a tutorial. Well, I think you can post it in the chat if folks want to follow up. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I can make sure and post that in Slack. Oh, do you have the link handy now? We could share it here.
Let me see if I can actually figure out how to do this.
Yeah, this is really great. Thank you so much, Markus. And if people think of questions, feel free to post them. There might be time later. So yeah, thank you so much.
Excellent. Thanks for.
Okay. Oh, whoops. I'm getting ahead of myself. No, go back. There we go. Some spoilers. All good. Okay. Don, would you like to take over from here?
Yeah. This is great. So Great Expectations 1.0, delighted to be speaking to you about this today. High level, what are we doing with Great Expectations 1.0? We're taking the opportunity to streamline our API, making big improvements to the user experience and improve the maintainability and contributor experience of the product. Our develop branch will move to a 1.0 version and be pre-released. And through this process, we love your feedback and support. So the rest of this is just going to be details around each of those points. So current state, Great Expectations is out there. It's at 0.18.3. We've been a 0-point product really for far too long because we really do behave as a 1.0 product. You know, we have a clear deprecation policy. We work really hard to avoid breaking changes and do yanks or quick patches if we do find that we've made breaking changes. We also have really strong support for a 0-point product. You know, we've got a great developer relations team, much of whom is on the call today. And so a big part of moving to 1.0 is just to like start painting reality. It'll also allow us to adopt semantic versioning, so that'll be clearer and easier about people to reason about the different versions, and we'll be able to rely on semantic versioning for communicating when there are breaking changes where you might want to pin or otherwise. We've also listened and learned a lot. You know, we've been on this journey for a long time. There's many experiments of like, well, what if it worked this way? What if it worked that way? What if it worked a different way? And they're all in there. So this is going to be an opportunity to apply a lot of what we've learned as we bring about 1.0. Next. So some of the things we've learned is that our API supports currently many ways of doing things, which makes it hard to learn. You know, you come in to look at the API surface of any product, and the more concise you can be, the more clear and the more opinionated, the easier it is to get started. And in that, there's no clear right way of doing things like, oh, I want to connect to data. Okay, well, there's a couple of different ways. Oh, I want to edit a suite. Okay, there's a few different ways for that. It also makes it hard to learn, you know, to the point where you're able to lead somebody down a very direct path. It's easier to learn. But I would say, like, the big thing for us is it really like slows down development and innovation, because with every change that we make to Great Expectations, or every change that our community contributes to Great Expectations, we have to run this big test suite to make sure that all the other ways that we have of doing the same thing still work. And with the amount of opportunities that we have for overriding configuration and stuff like that, the current API makes it hard to reason about state. So we've learned a lot. And I think there's more learnings on the next slide. And this is what I was alluding to earlier, like there's a lot of ways to configure Great Expectations, and then there's lots of ways to override that configuration at runtime. So like what's going on? What is an asset? Is the asset what I defined in config? Is it asset what I defined in config and then overrode a bunch of dimensions for it in a checkpoint or whatever? So having a clear way of reasoning about state, what's under test, is critical to getting the understanding and trust that you need of your data. You know, at the beginning, we provided a lot of optionality because folks were coming and said, oh, it'd sure be nice if, it'd sure be nice if, it'd sure be nice if. And of course, all those little requests have kind of piled up to create quite a substantial API with many different ways of doing the same thing. So 1.0 is going to help with some of that. In terms of applying learnings, one example that you've already seen that we shipped inside of a 0-point product by doing this side-by-side deployment was introducing what we internally call like fluent data sources, which is the current way of defining connecting to data, versus the batch config, which was underscored with like test YAML config. And you can just see the difference. And we got a lot of feedback on like, wow, it's really hard to connect to data. Man, there's a lot of configuration. And so the left is the old and the right is the new. Hallmarks of the implementation on the right, there's a clear right way, one way of doing things. You get type hints and dot completion all along the way to show you what the options are. The options are spelled out in clear parameters, whereas the old method really was anchored in a string, and then you had a method that you could use to test the string, but you get no help when authoring a string. And so like typos and not knowing where to plug in which option and stuff, we were able to make that much clearer by leveraging a clean API. So that's one example, and going forward, we'll have more examples like this to share. So this is about us being bolder, you know, recognizing that we're working as a 1.0 product. We have the behaviors organizationally and the organization to support delivering a 1.0 product. Adopting semantic versioning will make it means that you can reason about Great Expectations in the same way as you can other libraries that you use. Gives us an opportunity to apply what we've learned, learn from the community, learn from users, learn from a lot of painful support and help through getting people started with Great Expectations, and then streamline the API. So what is that going to look like? Well, first, this will make it easier to use, easier to document. So address a lot of the challenges that we face today. Easier to document, test, and maintain. I think, frankly, we have a lot of great documentation. We also get a lot of feedback that our documentation could be better. And part of that is just like, man, there's a lot to document because there's so many ways of doing the same thing. So this will improve our documentation tests, make it easier to improve and innovate so that we can change it more quickly, add new features more quickly, because there's less surface area for us to consider when making those changes. And it'll improve the contributor experience because it'll be more obvious where to plug things in. So I'm excited for that. How is it going to happen? We've been releasing Great Expectations every week for a long time, which frankly is a release cadence that I'm super proud of, especially as a Python library and the way that we ship and version stuff. That's pretty incredible. And we've made significant investments in our release process to be able to support that. That said, with this, we're going to pause that process because in order to make the breaking changes, some of the breaking changes and the significant changes and do the significant cleanup that we need to, we're going to need a larger time window. So we're going to create and publish a 1.0 pre-release. Stay tuned for that. That announcement should come here in the next week or two. And the work will continue as all work has been done in Great Expectations and open in public on our open source repo. So if you go to our main branch, which is named Develop, you'll be able to track everything that we're doing in 1.0. And our goal is to be able to remove the pre-release flag and release Great Expectations non-pre-release in about 4 months. There's a lot of things that we could have changed going into this, lots of dimensions of feedback. We're going to focus on a couple of critical ones for this. One is improvements to how you interactively create expectations. Right now in our API, this is done with the validator. And the validator started off as one thing, then turned into another thing, kind of ended up being an amalgamation of everything. It can be really tough to use. Did I save the suite? Did I include that expectation? Did I include the expectation that failed to pass in the latest batch or not? What is that suite called? Did it get added to my data context? You know, there's a lot of questions about the validator. We're going to solve that so that it's much clearer when you're going in, working with data to interactively create a suite, where that suite's going to end up, what it's going to be called, how it's going to be connected to things. We're improving improvements to checkpoint. And here's an example of like the optionality and surface area of the API. Like there are 19 parameters right now to run checkpoint, including 6 that are either dictionaries or lists of dictionaries. Like, good luck. So really, how many parameters should we have? We should have 0, maybe 1, maybe 2. You know, 19 is just an incredible surface area to test and maintain. And it makes it hard being able to reason about all this configuration when running a checkpoint and override so many of those values. So we're gonna fix that. We're gonna improve result format. I think result format is something that we've got a ton of feedback on, certainly over the 2+ years that I've been part of Great Expectations. It's actually a hard problem to solve. And we're kind of in some ways solving it in the wrong place right now. Like, but it's just becoming increasingly important. You know, result format, for instance, is one of the key ways that you're able to filter sensitive data out of your validation results. So it's just super, super important. And it's pretty complicated right now. Lots of different settings. It's basically a big dictionary. You got to read a lot of documentation in order to use it well. So I think we're able to do right now, we do a lot with result format. You know, the IDPK stuff is anchored in result format. So you get know like which results have failed and all this kind of stuff. But it needs to be clear to reason about. So we're going to make improvements there. We're going to remove data assistance. We launched data assistance about this time last year with the onboarding assistant. And James gave a great demo there. And it worked, has a great demo, but we've got a lot of feedback since we released it that it's like slow and the suite is too much, and the code that supports the data assistant is well, it's an enormous amount of pretty complicated code. We never really nailed the contributor experience for it, so we're taking this opportunity to take a step back. Also, I would say like data assistants were not totally adopted. They weren't super well adopted. So we feel there's a little impact to removing it. It frees us up an enormous amount from the development side, from the engineering side, to apply what we've learned, coming back with a more focused, more performant product that can help you answer questions about data and reason about it more effectively. And then last, we're going to remove the block style data sources. So that test YAML config example that I showed on the left earlier in the deck, we're going to remove those with 1.0. I think significantly, some of these changes are breaking changes. So moving to a 1.0 version gives you the opportunity to pin the way that you currently install Great Expectations if you need to less than 1.0, and be confident that you'll what you have in place will continue to run. But we'd really encourage you, and I think that's on the next slide, to join us on this journey. Check out the pre-release, check out 1.0, follow along, give us your feedback. A lot of the changes that we're making 1.0 reflects that feedback, and we treasure it. We really treasure it here at Great Expectations. So and one of the risks in a major product and introducing some of these breaking changes to the API is that folks get left behind. So we're going to try to make it clear and easy for you to join us on this journey. Certainly ahead of the major release, have a guide that highlights the things that have changed and how you can make the updates to the latest. But in the meantime, we're working in public. Check it out. Inviting contributions to 1.0 as well. So we'll have announcements on when that pre-release is out there in GitHub, and would love your feedback on Slack, Discourse. So that's it. I'll take
Awesome.
questions here in chat or in Slack or Discourse. Alexi.
Hi guys, thank you for updates. It's Alexei. Probably most of you knows about me. Okay, yes, I was really surprised about data assistance. Yeah, it's not the best tool, as you know, but anyway, in nowadays in modern data quality stack, most of tool has a rule suggestion, test suggestions. Yes, it is like Soda has a test suggestions part. DQ has a test suggestions. Yes, we know about Anamalo, who built product around test suggestions. But looks like you delete your test suggestions from Great Expectations. Are you going to add some functionality for test suggestions, or it will not your part, and for example you will use a pandas profiling for test suggestions? Can you share
great question. We've had, so first, like profiling, introspection, and using the information that we know about your data to generate tests I think it's critical to any data quality product, and it is going to be a critical part of Great Expectations. We've had many attempts at this in the past. If you remember, like the user configurable profiler, and then the data assistant built on the rule-based profiler, and the data assistant then was supposed to be a nice packaging of that. And we've learned a lot from each attempt, and the future of Great Expectations will definitely include a way of analyzing your data, looking at that, and suggesting tests. The data assistant itself, like you mentioned, there's some challenges with the implementation, but some sort of data profiling and test suggestion feature will be part of the future of Great Expectations for sure.
Okay, thank you.
We have a question posted in chat. Is there any way to retry failed expectations with Great Expectations operator?
I'd like to understand more about that use case.
I would think it's the Great Expectations operator in Airflow, and that if there were failures, how would they design a process to retry those? But Aditi, if you want to elaborate.
Yes, that's the use case. So we have the Great Expectations operator integrated with Airflow, and then if there are like any failed expectations, we would like to retry them. So just like pass a parameter as retry and then define a count so that we can retry the failed expectations.
I think so. One option that you have right now is using the Python operator within Airflow, and then writing that script to implement the retry behavior with Great Expectations. But I would love to learn more about your use case, maybe offline, as to like why they would fail the first time and then potentially succeed the next. So I'd love to hear from you offline.
Okay.
Before we push on to other, are there any other questions on these 1.0, looking towards 1.0 and changes that come with that? Okay. See, there's another question. I'm not sure if this is just something that's better suited for like the support channel. Is there any way to change the data context config at runtime based on requirement, like need to connect to 2 different roles in database and need to switch the config at runtime?
We have a one option could be to use an ephemeral data context in which you provide the config through Python, or you could initialize multiple file data contexts. You won't get there through the gx.get context method, but you can initialize a data context by calling its constructor that could support that use case. This is really shoot by the hip support though, so.
Yeah. Okay. I don't see anything else in chat. I'm just going to give it one more awkward pause in case there's any other questions people want to throw out before we wrap up. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming. Markus, thanks so much for presenting. And Don for all the updates, and Eric. And yeah, we will see you all in chat and see you all next time. Thanks so much.